Welcome to the Whiskey Vault.
I'm Rick.
I'm Daniel.
He's a level 3 whiskey sommelier.
He's a mooch currently in protest.
So, aspiring mooch.
But drinking a lot of really good whiskey.
In protest. Developing listening skills.
Yeah, developing. You've always had them. You just,
Yeah.
you know,
Alright.
you only call upon them when you need them.
And your stories are not one of
It's a limited resource.
I have so much bandwidth. You shut up. I'm vastly capable of a myriad of exceptional and impressive things.
Okay, so there's two nerdy things. This is single grain whiskey. One distillery, Scottish grain whiskey. I do this because this is around the time in history in the late 1800s. So 1831, Aeneas Coffee perfects the coffee still. And for about 70 years.
Hold on. Because I'm listening to what you're saying.
For about 70 years,
Hold on, I'm listening.
grain whiskey becomes a thing.
I'm a single grain whiskey. How
One
is it-
distillery.
Is the grain not barley?
Well, it has barley, but it can also have any other grain.
So, but single grain just means like...
Single, forget single grain. So it's really confusing in Scotland that the word single and the word grain refer to two totally different things, even though they're side by side.
Okay.
Single is not a descriptor of grain the way that single is not a descriptor of malt.
What the hell is it?
A single means one distillery. That's it.
Dude,
Full stop.
that is so... How is that helpful at
I
all
know.
to put it on the bottle?
Single malt, single means one distillery. Malt means all barley. Grain means a mix of other grains that might include barley but doesn't have to. And these days, it traditionally also means column still.
So I have in my head, because we've mentioned a few times, when it comes to whiskey and the categories and the types of processes and just everything involved, there's so many different words and terminology and phrasing that are unclear and confusing. And I imagine everybody who ever came up with a name for a process or a type of whiskey is drunk as hell. And they're like, this will screw with them. Call it single grain. And it doesn't have to mean there's a single grain at all. It just means it's a single distillery with grains. And there could be apparently any number of grains in here.
I think it's worse than that.
Oh, good.
I think it's actually truly sober nerds thinking that everyone understands their spreadsheets.
They're trying to spreadsheet the whiskey.
Yeah. I think that's what's actually happening. So first, the whiskey. This is Port Dundas, which is now closed, owned by Diageo, closed and destroyed.
No.
Because they moved all of their grain production to a different distillery,
It smells
which I
lovely.
think is Cameron Bridge.
It smells lovely.
But for the longest time, Port Dundas was the oldest running doing grain releases, and just conquered the whole market on grain releases. They were responsible for
A creamy vanilla floral.
I'm trying to remember the whole list because it's astoundingly
Creamy
long.
vanilla floral nose.
Port Dundas was Johnny Walker, J&B, Bell's, Black and White, VAT 69, Hague, White Horse. They were as a blend in just about everything.
That's a 40%. It smells more deep.
Yeah.
Interesting on the nose than 40%.
You can get a 12 and an 18 from Port Dundas until they run out of stock. And then that's going to be it. So there will be a day when the 12 and 18 will probably get really expensive because there's just no more left.
So do we know what kinds of... Did you say what kinds of grain? I stopped listening
No, so
accidentally.
it could be corn. So here's the irony.
Right.
Because it's in a column still, typically, grain whiskey is, because it's all about production capacity, right?
Yeah.
Because it's done in a column still, and it's often mostly corn, guess what it's closest to? Bourbon.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, imagine what's a corn-dominant whiskey aged in used oak? It's one of your favorites.
It's Michter's American.
Yes.
Michter's American.
Yes. So the closest thing to what you're trying right now, ironically, is an American bourbon mash aged in used oak.
So Michter's American whiskey. There's a Michter's bourbon. That's not the bourbon. Michter's American whiskey. It's not a bourbon. Because of the used oak.
Used oak.
Right.
But it's essentially a bourbon mash, but it's aged in used oak. So now there's only one difference. There's only one reason this would never be able to be bourbon, and that's because, or even American whiskey like that.
From Scotland.
It's, well, obviously that, but as far as grain mash goes and distilling goes, right? It's because in America, if it's used oak and bourbon, it still has to stay below a certain proof if it's bourbon. Off the still. Whereas in Scotland, you can go really high up to the point of neutral grain, almost, almost vodka, and then you age it in used oak, and so you do lose a lot of the big flavor components. So what are you getting in the nose? Because I get a little bit of that musty corn dust, ironically.
Creamy
and vanilla.
Creamy vanilla floral.
Whipped cream with the vanilla extract in it.
Honestly, on the taste too, it carries over. On the taste, that is just so dessert creamy whipped.
Yeah, whipped cream, but with extract of vanilla.
A little vanilla in there, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, if you like vanilla,
little citrus.
If you like vanilla and whipped cream,
no real oak.
this is your jam.
Let's look at what 6 years longer does.
Oh, do we have the 6 years older thing?
We have the 18.
What? Okay, is it same proof?
Well, wait. Hold off on the question because I want to tell you a story while you're drinking.
Okay.
So first try the 18.
Stories. It's a little darker because
18.
18. Oh, is the proof the same?
I prefer the 18. It's 43.
43. So marginally higher. Oh, where this is just sweet and whipped cream lightness, just airy lightness. Oh, there's some oak hiding in there, and then there's some ripe fruit.
Well, I just got a little bit of pipe tobacco leather smoke.
Are you on the 12?
Yeah. It just came out of nowhere. A slight darker note in there I was not anticipating.
And there's a dark honey.
That took it to...
And then, is that maltiness? Do we know what grains are in here?
No, we don't.
Okay.
It could be almost entirely corn. They usually use malt to introduce the enzymes. So there's still going to be some malt in there.
So,
but the replacement could be wheat or corn.
Do we know of a completely 100% corn Scotch?
No, there's not going to be a thing because if it's Scottish whiskey, they can't add enzymes. And so to get the enzymes to create the fermentation run, you have to have malted barley to help start that process. So even the almost entirely corn was still going to have barley in it.
See, well, almost entirely, how much corn is it?
I don't know.
Okay, because I would be really curious to compare, like a Scottish corn whiskey and what they do with corn up there compared to
that has a slight soapy
like
note
an Iron Root Republic whiskey.
This has a weird soapy note.
Soapy?
Yeah, it lingers like an oil.
Yeah, I'm tasting for the first time.
Yeah, sorry, I ruined that for you. I actually prefer the 12.
So you can tell this has more time to develop.
Yes.
But it didn't necessarily develop in the ways that you kind of hoped it would.
It didn't take it from good to, holy cow, it just took it to different.
What does carry over is the whipped cream note with vanilla.
Yes.
It does get a little bit more vibrant, but you do get, it's not going to ruin the whiskey for you. But there is this element of soapy note. It's not going to overwhelm the whole whiskey, but it's there. So
this becomes a story You grabbed the same place where I had sipped it, didn't you?
We might as well just make out. Slobber more?
I didn't slobber.
Look at that.
Slobber. It's not slobber.
I'm going to burn this off.
I just licked the whole half of the glass. It's no big deal.
Just kill it with alcohol.
Okay, so this is a story of snobs losing, but then to a turning point where you almost feel like they should have won. Right, full circle. So what happens is there's 5 to 8 decades of so Aeneas Coffee perfects the coffee still and calm still. He's in Ireland. He says, Ireland, do you want to use this? Yeah. And they're like, F you, pot stills are the only real whiskey. So he goes to Scotland. And Scotland says, sure, we can make a lot more in a lot less time and a lot less money.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So grain whiskey starts being produced and they just use whatever grain is cheapest.
Right.
Which is why the mash bill can change, right? So, now it doesn't because flavor profiles, blah, blah, blah. But at the time it was, corn's cheap, let's use corn. Or wheat is cheap, let's use wheat. Or whatever. Now, there develops a fight between the people who think that only malt whiskey is real.
Getting a caramel now on the Port Dundas. Yeah.
It's what it is? It's the sugar daddy on the stick.
Oh, yeah.
I figured that was what it was on the nose.
Caramel, yeah.
So what happens is a fight develops between the malt whiskey people who are like, malt and pot stills are the only real whiskey.
I can tell you right where this story went wrong and that everybody missed a tremendous opportunity. Go ahead.
And the column still people are like, no, this is still aged in oak and it's still grain.
Right.
So it's definitely a whiskey.
Right.
Well, this fight goes to the point where two guys in a small little town
Right.
decide to pick a fight with the local bartender
Okay.
by suing him, saying that he sold them false lying products because when he poured them a whiskey, it was a column still grain whiskey
Hold on.
instead of a malt.
So wait, frivolous lawsuits.
They were
have been-
looking to pick a fight.
This isn't a modern day thing. They've been doing frivolous lawsuits
Yes,
forever.
they were looking to pick a fight in order to prove that only malt whiskey was real whiskey.
Right.
Right? And so it ends up going to court in the local township. The court rules grain whiskey is not whiskey.
Okay.
That obviously creates a problem.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority of income at this point is already coming from the grain blends.
Sure.
Right? So the township goes, the Islington Borough says, this is too big for us. Can someone please take over this? Because this is now a problem and we don't want to be the ones responsible.
See, if I was on that township,
Yeah.
I would have been like, hold my whiskey.
Yeah, here we go. No, they were like, everyone freaked out because this is a worldwide implication.
Sure, yeah.
And they were like, we want to wash our hands of, then let someone else decide. So it goes to a royal commission.
Mm-hmm.
Royal commission, some may say, was influenced.
Right.
But they essentially decide, for the first time in history, officially,
Right.
grain whiskey is still whiskey. And it's an official decision. And forever it cements grain column distilling in Scotland as real whiskey.
Sure.
It shows back up in Ireland eventually.
Sure.
And immediately they flood the world with blends.
Yeah.
And so malt does not come back in style until the 80s.
So
After that.
this is where
until 1980s.
when people get caught up in protecting their perceived territory,
Mm-hmm.
and I've established a reputation in this space, and I have to defend it with my life, and everybody else who it doesn't do the things that I do the way that I do them based on my preferences is garbage. When people get territorial about this shit, a couple things happen. One, they alienate a tremendous number of people that they could have included
in the story.
in the story. And two, they miss a giant opportunity to evolve and develop. And it would have been the simplest thing in the world back in that day, have a simple category, a simple part of the naming, labeling process that determined whether it was column still or
Yeah.
pot still.
So that you could
And even-
decide what you like.
Even today, if I was able to just look at a whiskey bottle and see in a word that had an official legal
No,
binding-
you can in Scotland, but not the rest.
Yes, but any whiskey across the world, to see a word that I knew, oh, that's going to be a pot still whiskey, and it's this proof, and they do this mash bill, and it's this old.
So it's clear. So basically, it's
And that word alone, pot still,
buyer's proof.
makes that. But what?
Well, buyer's proof. So it's I'm a buyer. I know what I like. I'm looking to repeat it.
Yeah.
And labeling should make that easy.
And it doesn't.
It doesn't. Yeah.
So spreadsheets and territorial people who are so myopic about the way things have always been done can't see the opportunity right in front of them.
But who also keep companies from going bankrupt, keep people from being sued into their graves, and keep people from dying from shitty alcohol.
Here's to fighting, stealing, and
If
drinking.
you fight me, fight for
You
friends.
steal me, you steal whoever, sorry.
If you drink,
May you drink with us.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with us in the Whiskey Vault. Don't forget to throw in a like, hit that subscribe button on the bottom right, and drop a question or comment down below.